Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the joint media availability for the Senate and House Republican caucuses. I'm Kim Wirtz, Communications Director for the Senate Republicans, and I'll be moderating this morning. Today, we are joined by Senate Republican Leader John Braun, Senator Sharon Brown, Assistant ranking on Ways and Means, Senator Linda Wilson, ranking on Senate Ways and Means, Representative Wilcox, and House Republican Leader, and Representative Schmick, Ranking Republican on House Healthcare and Wellness Committee. Thank you for joining us, and we have an important announcement to make this morning, and with that, I will turn it over to Senator Braun.
All right, well, thank you, Kim, and thanks everyone for being here this morning. I'll be fairly brief. First, I want to talk about what I think is the top issue in our state, which is getting kids back in in-person learning. We've been talking a lot about this recent days. Virtually everyone in our state has come around to this view. Parents, certainly, children. I think many teachers, the governor has been working on the same issue. Really, it's just a matter of convincing teachers and the teachers union that it is safe to get back in school, and it is unquestionably safe to do so. Research says that. Our own experience here in Washington says that, and we know that this is really a lot of talk about equity in this session. This is the equity issue of our time. 60 to 70% of our children are not in school. We know that's harmful for them academically, emotionally, socially, and that is disproportionately harmful to children who have historically been disadvantaged. This is a top issue for us, and we're going to keep pushing on this issue. Related to that is, how do we get the rest of our society open? We've been waiting for weeks now for the governor to do something to show us a path forward. Frankly, we're tired of waiting, so we're going to offer a solution. And with that, I would turn it over to Senator Brown to provide the Republican solution.
Thank you, Senator Braun. And shortly after Valentine's Day in February, I met with the governor's staff and specifically asked for a plan for phase 3. Here we are in March and no plan is forthcoming. So as Senator Braun said, we went ahead and we made our own plan because the people of Washington deserve to know. We abandoned the regional plan because we experienced firsthand how that was a failure when a small recording error held an entire region hostage in phase 1 until local county officials recognized the error. No one knows a county better than the people that live there. They knew that something wasn't right in the reports and they pointed that out. That's why our own plan, Open Safe, Open Now, returns control to the counties. Under our plan, all counties go to phase 3 immediately. Our COVID numbers have been in free fall. There is no reason not to move us all into phase 3. Phase 3 means effective immediately. All students return to the classroom. Hospitality returns to 50%. State parks and tourism resumes at 50%. Indoor weddings and religious services and events are at 50%, and professional services are at 50%. After 3 weeks, all counties move to phase 4, which means everything opens at 100%. If a county determines it's not prepared to move forward, it will say why, and it will provide a plan with regard to move forward. I trust the people of Washington to demonstrate personal responsibility and do what is necessary to get children back in school, people back to work, and our businesses reopened completely. So I say, listen to the people, open safe, and open now.
With that, I believe I'd like Representative Wilcox to provide some perspective.
Well, thank you very much, John. I think it's important to acknowledge COVID in our state has been serious. We recently passed a somber mark, 5,000 deaths related to COVID. And we are not proposing that we ignore that at all. But we're also proposing that we pay attention to all of the costs that we've paid and are continuing to pay clear across Washington in our reaction to COVID. There's hardly a person I know who doesn't know a young person who's gone backwards, sometimes in tragic ways, because of the isolation that's been imposed on them. And I think almost everybody is aware of older parents or grandparents who are suffering. I know of one that I'm quite close to, one set that I feel like have aged 10 years. And the price is high. And it's absolutely critical that we pay attention to that price at the same time as we pay attention to the price that we've paid for COVID. I'm sure that the governor is going to respond to this somewhat like the president recently did in some states. But we need to be responsible. We need to recognize the costs on both sides of this equation. And I'm proud of the House and Senate Republicans who are working hard on this. And I'd like to ask my trusted longtime associate, Joe Schmidt, to add to this.
Well, there are costs to this, and they're not all financial. There's human costs to this. Yes, we've crossed the barrier of over 5,000 deaths. But as I talk to others, we're seeing a lot of mental health delivery, either through the Medicaid or private carriers, is at an all-time high. We've seen an unusual high number of suicides. There's a cost to staying where we're at. So do we advocate safely? Yes. Masks, wash your hands, social distance when possible. But we've been doing this for a year. We can move ahead. We know how to do it safely. I want to put the trust in the people to be able to protect themselves. And one other thing, we can allow our local health departments to make a lot of these decisions locally. They know better in their county than anybody else. Nobody from Olympia knows it better than our local health departments and their jurisdictions. They need to be involved with this decision process. So I appreciate being able to throw my 2 bits in. Thank you.
All right. I don't know that we have a program from here. Well, we've covered everyone but Senator Wilson. So Senator Wilson, if you'd like to say a few words, we'll get started with questions, then we'll get started with questions.
Well, I guess I could go, look at the budget side of things. We need to get our businesses back in business. It's just doesn't work for them to have 25%, particularly the restaurant and the hospitality and the fitness center industry. They need to have predictability. Every business needs predictability. And so I think, the good of the state and the good of these businesses, we need to get them back to business. And I think that's what our plan 3 or phase 3 will do. And then ultimately phase 4. When there is no plan, there is no hope. And I think that's exactly what we need to offer our people.
Well, thank you. Kim, I'm going to turn it back over to you to moderate questions, please.
Sounds good. With that, we will ask Hannah Scott from Cairo Radio to ask her question. Go ahead, Hannah.
Okay, I have 2. First, based on just what you've just announced, and perhaps Representative Wilcox or Senator Braun want to answer this. You mentioned that you thought that the governor might respond to this, as we've seen in the past, which seems to have been kind of dismissive as you've pushed for schools to reopen and phases to progress. What do you say to that? Does this accomplish anything, your plan, do you think?
Well, yeah, I worry that the governor responds to this in a dismissive fashion. I think he's on the spot. He has been sitting with no plan, no transparency, and even his thinking on a plan for phase 3 for weeks now. And I think that the people of Washington deserve to know. So he may be dismissive. I'd be disappointed if he is. I'd like to see him say, yeah, how about that? I got a plan similar, or we're not rooting for failure, just to be clear. We're rooting for a path forward, for hope, as Representative Schmidt said. We need something to guide the way, and in a vacuum created by the governor, we're providing a plan. Hopefully he adopts it. Historically, he may not be as friendly as we'd like. But I'd say, on schools, we pushed for 6 months now on reopening schools, and in the last 2 months, the governor's come around to our way of thinking, and he's picked that up and is pushing hard on it. So part of our job is to push for what we hear the people in Washington saying, and this is what we hear them saying. We're trying a path forward that provides hope, that is safe, and gets them back to as close to a normal life as we can safely do.
Well, I guess I would say that he can be dismissive if he wants. I'll be happy if he takes action in this direction.
Mhm.
Hannah, did you have a second question or a follow-up?
I do, on a separate issue. I'm wondering, probably Senator Braun, or if anyone else wants to chime in, the state Supreme Court ruling on the felony drug possession law, which we currently are without because of that ruling. There's been a proposal that I know Senator Braun and some of the others on the panel have signed on as co-sponsors of, from Senator Mullet, 5468. I asked Democratic senators about the possibility of that progressing the other day and was told it's not looking likely, essentially because the movement in the legislature right now is to keep people out of prison. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or any plans of your own.
Yeah, so one, I am fully supportive of the bill proposed by Senator Mullet. I think he is on the right track, both from a public safety standpoint and from a health standpoint. You know, I was a little disappointed to the response to your question with our Democratic colleagues on the response, that they seem unwilling to take on the real challenge here. And the results, I think, are going to be tragic. Not only are folks going to be released from prison, we have enormous backlog and costs at the counties as they try to work through all the resentencing. I mean, so there's an access to justice issue that the court just created. And then on a very human level, all the drug essentially, stops the drug courts that we have in operation around the state that I would tell you are doing very good work, helping folks who struggle with substance abuse problems figure that out and get back on a good path. And I've received several calls in the last week of people who desperately want to stay involved in drug court, but there's really no legal path now. We were helping them. We're essentially barred from helping them now, and their future looks pretty bleak as a result. So I disagree with the decision of the Supreme Court. I do think there's a very straightforward fix. I think the fix proposed by Senator Mullet is a good fix, straightforward, and we should act on it now. And I'm frankly disappointed that we don't have more urgency in the legislature to take it on.
And Hannah, that I could follow on with that. There is a law and justice meeting taking place today, and if this were a priority, it would be heard. It's not on the agenda.
In the House, Representative Mossbrucker is working on a suite of bills. There has been, from time to time, interest from the Democratic caucus, but I think that there's enough disagreement there that it's difficult for them to take action.
Okay. And next we'll go to Austin Jenkins from Northwest News Network. Austin?
Thank you. This is probably a question for Senators Wilson and Braun, and that is, with an expected vote on the capital gains tax coming up, perhaps over the weekend, what can we expect in terms of kind of your approach and strategy? Will there be dozens of amendments? What's the plan in response to what appears to be this bill advancing fairly quickly?
John, do you want that, or do you want?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm happy to start, and then I'll let you chime in with your thoughts if you'd like. So I'm not sure I'm prepared to disclose our floor strategy just yet in a press conference, but I don't think it's any surprise either. Look, we think this is very clearly an income tax. I mean, it says income tax in the bill over a dozen times. The IRS thinks it's an income tax. Every other state in the union that has this sort of tax calls it income tax. It's a graduated income tax that they're proposing. And we have long-standing constitutional and court precedent that says that's not allowed in our state. So I'm a little, not surprising. We're disappointed they continue to try to push forward a tax that doesn't comply with our state's constitution. And then to add to that, we have the people in one form or another rejecting it 10 times over. It's really, I would say, it's a part of our culture in Washington State. We do things different here. One of the things we do different is we don't have an income tax. And they will talk a lot about regressivity. I would tell you there's a lot of a lot better ways, frankly, to address regressivity than just to pass a tax. This is just an ideological thing. We know for a fact, unquestionably, we do not need the money this year. And so the only reason to do it is ideology. And then the last piece, which I think is just egregious, is the insistence that we keep an emergency clause in this bill. Look, this is a bill that doesn't go into effect until next January. Nothing is collected until 2023. There's no emergency here in this bill. The emergency clause is simple. It's to keep people from voting on this bill. And it is egregious that they continue to push to include it.
Well, I could probably add to that. The state has.
Spun up, sorry.
That's fine. The state has clearly, you're seeing the revenues come in, and they're higher than we thought they would be. And so the type of tax structure that we do have is working. I mean, we are one of a few states that did move forward instead of going backwards and winding up in a hole. And I think the other part about the egregious part about not allowing or going after the income tax and hoping it goes to a court to determine that, which of course we have over 85 years of precedence from our Supreme Court telling us that it is property and so therefore it would be an income tax, which would therefore make it unconstitutional. So we will have a very expensive court case that could last a year or two that the taxpayers have to pay. And then, and ultimately, we know where they're going with this, and that they want to have this structure set up so that we can have a full-blown income tax. And we already have 3 different Democrats on record as saying have issues with it being called an income tax. Senator Wynn decided that it is, he's admitted that it was an income tax. And then Senator Peterson has said, and I can quote, "This will give the Supreme Court the opportunity to revisit its bad decisions from 1934 and 1951 that income is property and will make it possible if we succeed to enact a progressive income tax with a simple majority vote." So there's the goal. And it is moving forward.
Austin, did you have a follow-up?
Sorry, no thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Covered that one.
So with that, we'll go to Sarah Gensler from McClatchy.
Thanks, Kim. This is about a discussion that sort of took place on the floor yesterday. I kind of dipped into this idea of learning loss and how the state might help students catch up after the school year. And I know there was some discussion of this year-round school concept, and then you heard Senator Rolfes say, that's really expensive to keep kids in school for extra learning days. Where are your caucuses at in terms of what an approach might look like that you would prefer to helping students catch up?
Well, we have a bill that Senator Hawkins has worked on for some time. It started really as an extended year where we took 180 days and spread them more evenly over the year. We funded some pilot projects to encourage schools to do that. That's morphed a little bit into a learning loss bill that offers some of that, but also offers some additional funding for schools to add some catch-up days. It is true, absolutely, that it is expensive to add days to the school year. I mean, $75 million a day. That sounds like a lot of money, but we got over 1 million students. And you do the math, it's like $75 a student. It adds up pretty quick. But here's the counterpoint. We are paying that every day and have been since September. And look what we're getting. We're getting almost nothing in many cases. Now, that's not universally true. There are some districts and mostly rural districts who have been in school either partially or fully most of the school year. And I'm enormously proud of those districts, their school boards and their administration, their teachers, because they've recognized what's really important in this crisis. But 60-70% of our students are not in school, and yet we're still paying, $75 million a day to get almost nothing. So it's true that it costs money to add days. It's also true that we are standing on the sidelines. The legislature is standing on the sidelines while we not only throw this money away day after day, but we inflict long-term harm on these students every day, day after day, and we allow really one group, let's be clear, one group, the state teachers union, to stand in the way of kids getting back to school. And yet we continue to tolerate that. That should be unacceptable. It should be unacceptable to anybody that cares about these kids and their future.
In the House, we are looking for opportunities to offer amendments on bills that will make it far more painful on school districts that decide that they're not going to bring kids back. That should not be a choice. And we've got a lot of hazards, I think, that we're dealing with right now related to the fact that the status quo has become, let's not do things. Let's not have kids in school, even when science and experience indicates that it can be safe. And I think it's absolutely our duty and the duty of everyone that cares in Washington to make sure that we don't let this, state of stasis continue. Not just in education, but in the economy and in all the other parts of our lives, where I think it's beginning to take hold, this state of emergency that says you don't do things. You don't do things that are necessary to children's learning, to older people's mental well-being, to the stability and the growth of children. We have got to break this cycle of we can't do things. It's time to start doing them again.
And I think that there's like $2 billion coming into the state that we, sorry, more than that. I'm thinking of the 2 trillion. We've got like 4 billion coming into the state that much of that will be directed to the schools. And so I'd really like to see some parameters around that would incentivize those schools to getting the funds and getting the kids back into school and being in full time.
Sarah, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Senator Brown just quickly about her plan. The top U.S. health officials have warned against rolling back public health measures with variant spreading and the decline in cases seeming to level off. And the governor has said he's sort of monitoring science around variants and vaccines as the state crafts future phases. So I'm just curious if you can speak to if and how that public health advice and emerging science factored into your plan.
Well, when we look at the science in the state of Washington, our COVID numbers, again, I'll reiterate, are free falling. So that shows that what we've been doing has been helping to reduce the numbers. There's absolutely no reason why we should keep everyone in the current stasis that we're in. We really have the ability. I trust the people of Washington to make the right decisions.
I would just add to that, it's not just in Washington, around the country, the numbers are going down quickly. That doesn't mean, and we're not suggesting that all of a sudden we go back to life as normal, before COVID. It just means we have the opportunity that people individually are making good decisions to keep themselves, their families, their neighbors safe. And we should trust them to continue to do that, but give them the freedom to operate their lives, more fully and safely.
I could jump in here. Remember when this first started, we didn't want to overrun our healthcare system and we wanted to bend the curve. Well, we're seeing with the numbers going down dramatically. And in my small community access hospitals, I have one hospital that has had less than 5 COVID patients. That's not exactly an overrun. So I do believe that people have heeded safe precautions, and we need to encourage that, and we need to open up.
Okay, and next we'll go to Joseph O'Sullivan with the Seattle Times.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on the capital gains tax. Since we've seen so many votes over the years against taxes at the ballot box, the Supreme Court has ruled that income is property. Is the real fear with Democrats passing this that the Supreme Court will sanction this time around?
Well, if it happens, it would be, we would be an outlier in every state in the union and the IRS. So it would be almost unfathomable that they would rule that way, being you have to file this on your income tax statements at tax time. So it would be rolling back every precedent that every other Supreme Court in the state of Washington has indicated over the past 85 years. So I would hope that they wouldn't rule that way, but I guess the possibility is there. And then we've enacted a capital gains tax, and then further from there, you go to an income tax, full-on income tax, which in order to still be constitutional, you've got to do it on everyone equally. So people beware.
Yeah, I mean, I have, as Linda said, we have some concerns about what the Supreme Court does. Just to be clear, the Supreme Court just said it's okay to have hard drugs on your person anytime, and in doing so have wreaked enormous havoc across our state for the very people I think they're trying to help. But my bigger concern is actually, what do the voters want? Voters have been pretty clear as recently as 2010 on this issue. So I get we can have a policy disagreement on whether we need a tax, don't need a tax, and whether this is the right tax, the wrong tax. But to go so far as to try to prohibit the voters from weighing in on this issue when they have such a long and clear record of where they stand on this, that just seems anti-democracy to me, frankly.
And I feel it's really disingenuous to be saying how it's only the rich that are going to be paying that. You've got a lot of people out there with tax or stock that they've purchased over the course of many years who aren't rich. They just made it a wise investment, and it's a one-time thing. So you have a small business that, quite frankly, $6 million revenues is not a large business. In fact, they may not make any money at all. It's only revenues that they're counting and employees. So if you have over 50 employees, regardless of the amount of money that you make or have or revenue, you're still going to be responsible for paying that tax. What happens when they go to sell that business and you've got 60 employees? 11 employees are going to be fired because they can't. That's what will stop them from having to be included in that tax. So there's a lot of ramifications here for a lot of people, not just the rich.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I've got a follow-up question, if you can spare it for another minute here.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. Sorry, I should have asked you if you had a follow-up.
I'm looking at the reopening plan now. So this looks like you reopen phase 3 effective immediately. And then if there's no backsliding anywhere in 3 weeks, the state is completely open again on every front. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so you're comfortable fully open at the end of March when the vaccine hasn't been fully distributed? And then would this lift the mask mandate as well?
I'm comfortable allowing the counties to make the decision, allowing the counties to have that local control. Let's remember that it was a small county in southeastern Washington that discovered the data error. It wasn't even a data error, it was an input error that would have kept an entire region of the state in phase 1. And so we really need to return that control with regard to opening to our locals.
Hey, Joe, let me jump in on this too. You know, we are not anti-mask, and you know, Washington has achieved pretty high compliance with masking. And if that helps us allow people to socialize and get the economy going again, then masks are not a bad thing. When it comes to vaccinations, I applaud the fact that we've made better progress over the last month or two. And when people ask me about vaccine, I just tell them I'm a lifelong livestock farmer. I've given tens of thousands of vaccinations, and it's only fair that I get vaccinated too. I would encourage people to be vaccinated. So we are not trying to encourage people not to stay safe. What we are trying to do is allow people to resume life in the safest possible way and giving the counties the authority to make their own choices.
Okay, with that, I'll ask, does anybody have one last question before we end for the day? No? All right, Senator Braun or Representative Wilcox, would you like to give closing comments?
I would simply thank everyone for being here. I thought we had good questions and a good dialogue, and I appreciate your interest.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. Let's all work together to unwind this emergency and get back to living life again.
Thank you very much.